Cartels are most insidious when we don't talk about them, when they hide in the shadows but in plain view. The banking system, payments, finance, are the biggest cartel in the world, and nobody calls them a cartel because they're the biggest cartel in the world. So they own all of the media, newspaper, channels, politicians, and laws. And that makes it very easy for them to get away with crimes. In fact, mega crimes.
Whether intentionally or whether we're aware of it or not, we've allowed the banking system to be the sole creator of money. So the banking system has privileged themselves with that creation function, and they abused it and overused it, which led to the global financial crisis and then the breakdown. So the question here is, who gets to create money and how does the money get created?
Money is half of every transaction. It is the most important commodity in the world. And yet, for the most part, people have only the most superficial understanding of it.
Why has there been full faith and credit in the US dollar? It works because it has worked so long that people just accept that it works. There's faith in it. But there's less faith in it since August of 2007 because it has been such a drag, which has opened the door to competing currency system, which is where this wave of innovation in digital currencies has come from.
Currency competition is so vital.
Without currency competition, the market isn't able to sort out better performing options from the lesser performing options.
After all, money is a good like all others, and it competes for the attention of those using it.
And I've said all along that we're going to go through these cryptocurrency bubbles, largely because people have the wrong idea about what these things are for, which is understandable. Again, Fed money printing, inflation, that's all the dollar's going to collapse. And so in 2021, everybody piled into especially cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin because they were convinced the dollar's going to collapse. Here come consumer prices. See, it's all going to fall apart. They were looking for a store of value. But that's not what we need here. But we do need a good, useful medium, a useful and efficient medium of exchange, which is what a lot of crypto and digital currency projects are working on.
It just seemed so obvious to me that whichever network could operate the most quickly, the most cheaply, and could withstand the most kinds of attacks in whatever form they came, that would be the network that pulled through.
A single reserve currency is actually kind of unusual. There's usually several active at a single time, and there's no reason why you couldn't, or no reason why we wouldn't want that. Because like competition in the real economy, competition in a money marketplace leads to the best results.
For the first time ever, a form of money, superior to all others due to its specific attributes, has been successfully decentralized and decoupled from the material world in such a way that nobody can turn the system off.
People don't realize we've been on a virtual currency ledger system, and so it's not that big of a leap to go into a privatized, decentralized, single ledger system where we don't prioritize the banking system to keep track of who owes what. So that's not that really difficult once people realize what the monetary system is all about. The problem is the government and the Federal Reserve don't want you to know this because they want you to believe the government and the Federal Reserve are where the power of money comes from.
I think that there is now a certain inevitability that markets around the world will gradually gravitate toward the superior money.
Governments have seen the amount of progress that has taken place in the private digital currency space, and they've been way behind all along. The most optimistic scenario here is that the digital currencies begin to improve themselves, and do so under the radar, so that by the time the government sees it as a threat, it's already too late. Which, by the way, is exactly what happened with the Eurodollar system. The Eurodollar system began in the 1950s, and nobody knew it, except the bankers that were operating it.
The way I look at it is we need the most robust, unstoppable version of this tech for it to succeed.
So a digital currency, the task before it is to prove itself as a useful and dependable medium of exchange, and doing so will overcome that hurdle and that burden of trust. Doesn't need taxation authority, doesn't need physical commodity. It just needs to demonstrate that it is a useful medium, a useful and dependable medium of exchange.
So let competition prevail.
Becoming a useful and dependable medium of exchange. That's kind of what we're here to talk about today, isn't it, fellas?
That's right.
Yes,
My
let's go
goodness.
ahead.
Well, welcome to Incubator Weekly, everybody. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Ryan. And today, our guest is CTO of Dash Core Group, Sam Westrich, who is here to talk about and take questions, a treasury proposal he made just a few days ago. Is that right, Sam?
Yes, that's right. It's going to be
Well,
fun.
I do think we have plenty of those questions, both from Ryan and myself, and also from some viewers. So let us not waste any more time talking about it and get right into it. Ryan, would you like, well, first of all, actually, Sam, will you just give us just a general overview? What is this proposal we're about to discuss?
Sure. If for people not aware, the proposal is to redistribute the block reward. It's currently going to miners at 36%. Maybe not currently, but it's aiming in the next year and a half to go to miners at 36%, masternode at 54%, and the treasury at 10%. And the redistribution that the proposal is aiming to go for is 60% to the masternode owners, 20% to the treasury, and 20% to miners.
Okay. And now this general idea is, first of all, it's relevant to the incubator because we have a proposal in the incubator right now that's pretty much saying to do research on this very topic. So Sam, did you kind of get this proposal or get this idea from when the incubator and Ryan started talking about it? Have you had this idea for a long time and just thought to make it recently? Or will you give us a bit of your thought process on where this came from?
Yeah, sure. So actually, when the treasury was introduced, I'm going to give a very long history here because it's actually quite interesting. When the treasury was introduced, this is a very long time ago.
I think it was fall of 2015.
Yes. So we were actually in a different Slack than the current Slack. So DCG operates in a Slack group, right? We don't use Discord. We have our own internal Slack where we talk. And we actually switched Slacks, I believe, in 2016. So the old history is no longer available to us, sadly. But in 2015, I had a conversation with Evan where, we were discussing treasury, and he was saying, I think I'm going to put it at 20%. And I was like, I think that's too much, man. Let's, I was talking with big investors at the time that I knew. I was actually living in China at the time, and I really felt like, it would, back then, there was not really any ICOs. At least I don't think there were any ICOs. There was no, there was basically proof of work, blockchains, and if you took anything away from the distribution to give to a foundation or anything like that, it was seen really badly. Nowadays, everything is that, right? There's no projects that basically only distribute to miners. So back then I was like, I don't think that we should really go to 20%. I think 10% is probably the sweet spot. I said that. There were more people I know that also said that, and it convinced Evan, put the treasury to make, the proposal to the network. I don't really remember how that went. I think it was just proposed. I mean, it was just made as a software upgrade. But because there was no treasury to actually be able to vote. But yeah, so that's where the 10% came from. Me and some other people basically convinced Evan for 10%. Now, I think that was actually the right move at the time. And as time moved forward, I started to regret that decision. More that I voiced my opposition to that amount. And more recently, we, let's skip forward to 2018 when we made the deterministic masternode list and the quorums. Well, we decided to use the entropy by miners, and that really justified still having miners contribute, and I mean they're doing a big contribution there by basically being the entropy that forms quorums. So it made sense that they still get heavily rewarded for that. But as time went by, we realized that there was an attack on that system, where miners could mine tons of blocks and alter the distribution of quorums. Now, this is not actually that bad right now, but in platform, when platform launches, if one entity were to own a lot of Evo nodes and they just rent the hash power, or they own a lot of the hash power, that could really be a problem. And it was worrying me, because if you were able to own 66% of all of Evo nodes, you are able to basically destroy the network. 66% is a lot. If you're able to own more than 1/3, you're able to take it down. We ran the numbers. There's no entity that even comes close to 66%. There's no multiple entities that come close to 66%. So it's pretty safe. However, we want to really ensure that we have the most safe system possible. So we're working on a different way to find the randomness needed for the quorum distribution to make the system much more secure. And thanks to Virgil and other people in DCG, we found that system, and we built it, and it is coming live in V20. So in V20, we no longer rely on the miners to provide that entropy for quorum distribution. On platform side, we no longer have, platform itself does not use miners in any sense, and that's basically going to be pretty much half of our network. So where we have miners at the moment are for the payment chain that remains a hybrid proof of stake, proof of work type chain. It's a little complex, but yes. So it kind of made sense to make this proposal. At the same time, it's no mystery, not mystery. It's no secret. Yes, that's the word. Sorry, it's pretty late here. I'm in Thailand, by the way, for people who don't know. It's no secret that Dash Core Group has been running a deficit for a very long time, and we are in a process right now of having to let go of a lot of contributors. That is going to happen regardless if this proposal passes or not. However, this proposal passing would really alleviate problems in the future. So those are the two reasons to make this proposal. I would have made the proposal regardless, even if Dash was at $100, $200, I would have made it. I probably would not have made it this month, but I would have made it at some point because it's the right thing to do. As we look, we're going to answer a lot of this stuff in detail, probably with questions. But as we look at what's currently happening on our network and how the crypto market evolves, we can see that, right now, I believe right now, Dash is at position 94 in coin market cap over the last 4 years. And those coins that have come in and that are above us, they're not proof of work coins. They really aren't. So what happens, in my opinion, is efficiency in the space is paramount, and proof of work is an extremely good concept that is inefficient. And I do believe that we need to take from proof of work what is necessary, and and make things as efficient as possible. So right now, what I'm proposing is to keep proof of work because there's no ability to keep uncensorable transitions in proof of stake. A lot of other networks have proof of stake, but their networks, they can be censored by the collective. One good thing about proof of work is if a miner decides to not include a transaction, another miner later will be able to. And that is actually something that's very good for a digital currency because the digital currency shouldn't care about who's making the transaction as long as somebody is willing to mine it. So, but if we're able to solve that issue and other issues in the future, yes, we need to go to the most efficient system as possible. What is that, the most efficient system as possible? It means the system that pays the least amount of energy to electricity companies to run the network. And that's just that's just nature. Systems tend to evolve. If something is inefficient, something else that is efficient will come and take its place if it offers the same value. So right now, I believe the best thing to do is to make our system more efficient, get the most value for the money that the investors are paying, and at the right time in the future, after the problems that can be solved, I'm not even sure that they can. Like, I think they can. We have solved in Dash, we've solved problems again and again and again. Every single time we're faced with a problem, we have been able to solve it. And I believe that one day we will be able to solve that problem as well. But to this month, next month, the next month after, those are not the months for solving that problem. Those are the months for launching platform after, many years.
So I just wanted to back up a little bit, and in case anybody's viewing this that hasn't actually seen the proposal, Pete, maybe you could share my screen. I did a screen share. Yes. So this is the proposal on Dash Central. And I'll just kind of scroll through it so that people can read it without having to click through the link. And it's pretty short. The proposal is very succinct. It's not very complicated proposal. The main thing is right here. This is the proposed new allocation in light of the above, which is just kind of more of the justification, which we've talked a little bit about. And then you'll also notice, I'm not going to scroll through the whole comment section, but this is obviously one of the most commented on proposals. So I'll just kind of flip through here just to give people an idea of how important of a decision this is. I, by the way, I'm in support of this proposal. Here's my comment right here, by the way. For various reasons, I just kind of go through the reasons that I am supporting it. Basically, there are three main aspects to this proposal: increasing the share of masternode yield, increasing the allocation to masternodes, decreasing the allocation to miners, and increasing the allocation to the treasury. And I think that personally, I think that we're going in the right direction with all three of these changes. So I can imagine somebody that might think, well, I like the reducing miner share because of the technology that we've developed, and we've had innovations that make mining less needed. But I don't like the increasing the share to masternode owners, for example. They're just, they're just lazy and they sit around and they just collect a dividend. There's that mentality. And then there could be the other two or three permutations of that, where somebody might like increasing the masternode share, but don't want to take from the miners, or vice versa. There's lots of different ways to look at this, and that's what makes this such a hard decision, is that it is combining several different decisions into one proposal, which is one of the criticisms behind this. But that also has to be balanced against the complications that come with doing 3 different, 4 different, however many different proposals you want to isolate all the different variables. That's also time consuming and a difficult process in general. And sometimes these are coupled things where, you can't really do one without doing the other, or the person that's proposing it doesn't necessarily want to do one thing without doing the other. So that's just a brief introduction to what we're talking about here. But yeah, I wanted to jump as quickly into questions as possible, because obviously Sam's in support of this. I'm also in support of this. But I want to hear some people, or address some of the concerns that people have that are against this. And we do have some questions lined up for that, but people feel free in the chat to post your questions. And I will also give this invitation, and I haven't really consulted with Amanda on this, so maybe she can shut this down. But I'd be more than happy to cover this next week as well, and bring on somebody that's against this proposal and give them some time to speak about this. And that would basically be the last word as far as Incubator Weekly goes, because it's this week, next week, and then before the following week after that, it will already have been decided. So they're about 13 or 14 days, maybe even less, 12 days left of voting. I think it was probably on my screen there. Let's see. Anyway,
it's 14. Voting deadline is 11 days.
Yeah, 11 days. So it's time to kind of evaluate this right away and get the votes in. But yeah, like I said, next week we can bring on whoever wants to come on and share their opposition to this. I'd be happy to give that a venue.
I approve of that. So reach out to me or Ryan or Pete if you think you're the guy to come on and speak against this proposal next week.
I also just wanted to say one thing real quick, because I hauled this into the office for this very reason. I wanted to give a little visual that although I'm for this proposal, miners, I come in peace. I am among your ranks. At least I used to be a miner. I have the miner to prove this. But we're in a hard time right now, economically, both in the global macro scene as well as in Dash. And I commend Sam for making this proposal, because it's a hard proposal, right? He's not the CEO. He's kind of just filling the role of CEO while also filling the role of CTO. And I guess if there's one criticism that I have of this proposal, is that it came way, way, way too late. I would have liked to have seen this 2 years ago when I was talking about it then. But at this point, I don't really criticize Sam for that, because he's the CTO. It's not his job to really do this. But at the same time, it needed to be done, I think, a while ago. It looks now like, this is just a desperate money grab from DCG and saying, oh, we can't continue operations unless we do this. But like Sam has mentioned, and like I'll reiterate, this is a change that makes sense from an efficiency standpoint in the first place, regardless of whether DCG has funding or not, or whether DCG gets an ounce of new funding from this proposal. It's just the right thing to do in all 3 aspects, like I said in my comment, which I won't read in full. But yeah, miners, I think there are a lot of people that are nostalgic about the idea of mining, and that it's, that's how cryptocurrency started. That's how Bitcoin works. And the reality is we just have better technologies that make mining less needed. And so it's hard for any CEO to cut any kind of staff that's been part of an organization, and miners are part of our organization. but CEOs need to make hard decisions. That's what they get paid for. And this is one of those hard decisions that, although it's painful to make, it's just necessary thing. Everybody has to cut the unnecessary things in hard times.
Okay, well, so we've established that this proposal, if nothing else, aims to increase the efficiency of the Dash network by specifically decreasing the amount that we're paying to electricity companies. But before we go any further, I personally would like to know, this is a question I've had for a long time, I don't know why I never asked it before, but when it is said that we are paying for more electricity than we need, but at the same time, this proposal does not propose that we become a proof of stake network, we're still a proof of work network, how do we know that we're overpaying for electricity? How does anybody know that we're not underpaying? I guess we could know we're not underpaying because we haven't sustained an attack. Okay, how do we know we're overpaying? And if so, by approximately how much?
Okay,
so I think you mentioned it. I'll let Sam speak real quick here, but you mentioned it. You have to place this in the context of an attack. That is the whole reason that we have mining, is to prevent attacks or secure the network. But what does it actually mean to secure the network? Go ahead, Sam. You're probably better to talk about this than me. But
sorry, I was no. Go. I'll go afterwards.
Okay. Well, actually, you go ahead, because I've talked about this on Discord as well already. So.
Oh, okay. So basically, how to formulate this? Proof of work is not secure. It is not. 51% happen on proof of work chains. In fact, most proof of work chains have had 51% attacks.
But doesn't chain locks mean we don't have to worry about that?
Exactly. Chain locks mean we don't have to worry about that. On top of that, we have instant send that also means we don't have to worry about that. So we addressed these issues a while back. Now, the counter argument here is, okay, what happens if chain locks fail? That happened this year already, right? It happened one time, every time I say one time, I can just imagine the community member one time saying one time. But yeah, that, and shout out to one time, by the way. Yeah, so that happened. And what happens if chain locks fail again? And then we are, miners realize that chain locks have failed and they start attacking the network. Yeah, that is the negative here. But let's actually remind ourselves how much it costs to currently attack the network. Each block in Dash gets a reward of approximately a little bit less than 1 Dash. The cost to attack the network right now for for the amount of blocks -1. So if you're going to attack for 2 blocks, it would only cost 1 block of attack, would actually be the mining reward. So a little bit less. So let's say $24. Now, it's going to cost $24 to attack for 1 block. If you want to attack for 6 blocks and you have more than 50% of the hash power, it's going to cost you, about $100, because a little bit less. But yeah. And then you're going to get reimbursed for all that money because you actually successfully launched the attack. The other miners will have nothing. So then we have to really ask ourselves, okay, so why did no miners do this when chain locks failed last time? There's 3 answers to that question, 3 potential answers. The first answer is that they're honest. And I think that that's actually true. I think most miners are honest people, and that the mining pools have a public visibility. They don't want to be attacking a network. It's not something that they want to be seen doing. It's not super easy to buy X11 hashing power just to attack a network and beat those 3 miners. It's not readily available, or the top mining pools. So yeah, they don't do it. The second possibility is it's too complicated and they just don't want to devote the manpower to try to formulate the attack. It's also possible. Third possibility is that a lot of the mining power is really run by one company or one entity, and it's just broken up into mining pools. That's another possibility. So they wouldn't actually gain anything by doing this attack because they're already getting everything. And then we really have a problem with decentralization.
There's
I don't know
the fact that one company is also the main producer of mining hardware, Bitmain.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if you really think about like the security of the network, how likely do you think it is that Bitmain is not talking with governments, whether that's the Chinese government or the American government, United States government? I think it's very likely that these large corporations who are responsible for putting out this hardware, they're probably already in talks, if not already, they will be soon. And governments will be pressuring them to either sell them the hardware so that they can participate in mining, so that they could actually attack the network very, very easily. Or you do what BlackRock is just doing with Bitcoin mining companies, and you just buy shares in those companies. And you've essentially compromised your whole network because of mining. So
I personally am not going to speculate on that. I have no clue. I have no clue. So I have no inclination to think that that's true. It could be.
Well, it is a fact. I mean, it's just a fact that BlackRock has purchased shares in at least 4 of the top 5 Bitcoin companies. That's public knowledge. And what they do with that is, like you said, speculation. But like all things, it's a risk, and we always try to mitigate risk, not necessarily things that we know are happening. It's the risk of things that could be happening.
Okay.
So anyway,
Go
ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, the answer to the question then of how do we know that we're overpaying and roughly by how much is, can I just get it in a short version? How do we know we're overpaying and by roughly how much? Like, are we paying twice as much as we need to pay? 10 times as much as we need to pay?
Okay, let me answer that again, and then I'll give you a short answer because I went on a massive tangents, etc. So currently, we're spending about 24 in mining rewards per block, right? This basically, I looked at the numbers a little bit. We're giving around $13,500 to miners per day, dollars. And I would guess that they in turn are probably paying around 13,000 in electricity. That's I've looked at electricity prices, unless it's possible that some miners are not paying electricity through government contracts or other ways to not pay electricity. I also know that some miners are not making any profit and are basically just mining to support the network at this point. That they bought a miner, but they just keep it running even though they're not making any money. They're not losing money, but they're just keeping it on. So
keep the basement warm, maybe.
That's what I was literally doing with my miners.
It's a good heater, but let's imagine that the mining reward goes from Ryan, do you know exactly where it's at right now?
The mining reward? I do, but I don't want to take the time to look it up.
Okay.
But I think, unless you wanted to make another point, Sam, the reason this question is so hard to answer, at least for me, is because you can't calculate it. This is a probabilistic attack that has so many different human variables that you can't just assign a formula to it and say, this is exactly how much mining we need. It's more like you have to look at the purpose of mining. And the purpose of mining is to assemble blocks of transactions on the network and then propose a certain block of transactions that says all of these transactions are valid. And I propose that these transactions be set in stone. And that's what mining is doing. And the only thing that kind of throws a wrench in this, throws sand into these gears, is when you have the possibility that miners will essentially attack the network itself, and by saying, hey, here's some valid transactions, but I'm going to create another valid transaction that contradicts the transaction that was also valid, because they use the same inputs, for example. That's the so-called double spend attack, and you need 51% of the mining power to do that. So in a very real sense, it doesn't actually matter how much you're sending to miners. If 100% of miners were honest, you would only need one miner, one miner that is doing that honestly. Now, the tricky part is when you get, if you have, I wish I had a visual of this, but to look at the mining pool allocation, the scenario that you have to draw up in your head is, look at the different mining pools and how many of those mining pools, let's say 3 mining pools, make up 51% of the mining network. If those 3 mining pools colluded and helped to attack the network by performing a double spend transaction, then that's a problem. And so it doesn't matter how much, it doesn't really matter how much we're putting towards miners. It matters more about the allocation and the trust that we have in these miners to not collude to send conflicting transactions on the network.
I have
Okay,
something to say quickly. Oh, so
Please.
sorry.
Please.
And Ryan, you're going to hate me for correcting something you said.
That's
but
okay.
You got 2 attacks mixed up. So
Okay.
the instance, instant sends protects us against the double spend attack, but you don't need 51% of miners to be bad for a double spend attack. If you're a miner, you actually just need to be a miner. So what happens is you just you send a transaction to somebody. Let's say you're the miner and you send a transaction, and then you mine a block with a conflicting transaction, and that's just it. You don't need 51% attack there. The 51% attack is for a chain reorganization, and that's much more painful.
Right.
That's much more painful, and I think that's the one you were thinking about.
Yeah, and that's when we talk about the technology that Dash has developed. We have instant send and we have chain locks, and those 2 things are protecting against this weakness. That's what Dash has developed. Dash Core Group, shout out to Dash Core Group, has developed these technologies to secure against those 2 things. There are 2 main, I guess you'd call them primitives on the network, in terms of you have transactions and then you have blocks of transactions. Instant send protects transactions, and then chain locks protects blocks from not being reorganized. So those 2 primary things, we have developed technologies that masternodes do that protect against those 2 specific things. So really the only thing left that miners are doing is they're both assembling, they're building the blocks of transactions, and then they're proposing those blocks of transactions to the network as valid using that proof of work mechanism. And Ethereum takes this a step further by separating the proposers and the builders. They call it PBS, proposer builder separation. But miners do that in a combined sense. But those are really the only 2 things that they're doing right now, and those actually could be done by masternodes with further development. And that's particularly why I support increasing the super block, the treasury, because we need that development to continue becoming more efficient. And in the ideal scenario, we would actually do away with mining altogether if we can develop a process where masternodes are the ones that are building and proposing blocks to the network. And if we can do that in a way that's as censorship resistant as mining, then we've completely reduced our costs by a huge factor. And those costs can then be put into further development or into rewards for masternode owners so that people buy more Dash, increase the price. And it's very possible that through this whole process, through this proposal, that if the price of Dash goes up, that miners actually would come out on top, despite being cut in terms of their allocation. If the rewards that they're getting are worth more on the market, then it actually makes sense for them as well. So it's not just a win-win-lose, wins for masternode owners, wins for treasury contractors, and loss for miners. It can actually be a win-win-win, and that's I think the ultimate goal of this long term.
Yeah.
So let's get to Sergey's question here. Don't you think that miners just stop mining and go away if this proposal is confirmed, so that we might be without any proof of work at all?
I'll answer that one, no problem. Then I'll mine.
Some miners would go away. The marginally inefficient miners would go away. That makes the rest of the mining pool more efficient.
Right. This does sound like a scenario where whoever sticks around just stands to make more and more and more money, right? It's kind of like a situation where maybe there's a strike, and if you're a scab, nobody can even come and like knock on your door and be like, hey, we're here to mess you up. You just secretly plug in your machine and make a ton more money.
This is actually a pass-fail kind of thing for a miner. So if let's assume this proposal passes, then the mining allocation reduces, and the miner, every block, miners are getting less of a reward immediately, right away, like the first block that comes out. Well, some miners are going to decide, I cannot mine profitably at this point, and I will drop out. The ones that do remain, they remain just as profitable as they were before, because other miners dropped out. So if you are on the more efficient end of the mining, then you actually will not see a reduction in your rewards in that sense.
Unless there's one entity that is doing all the mining.
That's true. Unless there's one entity doing all the mining, then some of their miners drop out, and that's less profitable for that organization as a whole. But in general, if some miners drop out of the network, the ones that do remain, they're getting compensated just as much as they used to be.
So now, Sam, your proposal says that in the next release of Dash Core, that the formation of quorums is no longer pulling entropy from the miners' mined blocks. Mm-hmm. So what is being used instead as the entropy to make masternode quorums?
I like tech questions. Okay, so basically, when you sign a block, when you do a chain lock, for example, there's a signature done by the masternodes, and this is a threshold recovered signature. And the threshold recovered signature is actually provably random, because let's imagine that, well, we're only 3 people here, but let's imagine that we were 30 people, right? And we all had a secret number. And, how to make this comprehensible? Let's say you add all of those numbers together. Unless you know everybody's number, you would not be able to know the last the combined number. There are attacks on what I just said, but in the threshold recoverable situation, there is no way to attack it. It is provably random, and we can use that as the entropy.
Okay.
So it is, yeah. So there's actually and then there's a second part of that. What happens if chain locks fail and there are none? Well, we can use a seed of the last chain lock and continue off of that seed until there's another chain lock.
So Sam, I think you've been around the Dash project long enough to answer this question also, which is, when masternodes were first introduced on the network, which, please correct me if I'm wrong, was late 2014, like almost a year after Dash had been launched. Obviously, at that point, that involved a shift of the block reward a reallocation from prior it had been going 100% to miners to, hey, now these whole new characters are on the network masternodes and half of the block reward is now going to them. So how did that happen at the time? Was there a sort of, did the miners all adopt it? Did some hash power drop off? Was it at the expected amount, or just how did that go? Because that would have been, maybe just as drastic or not quite as what you're proposing. Give us some thoughts on that.
Sure. So a lot of crypto projects, I would say, have somewhat of a strongman, right? Back in the day, it was Evan. Like he ran the project at that point, right? So and Ethereum has Vitalik, Bitcoin had Satoshi at one point, and then after he left, I guess it was very decentralized. But for Dash, it then became quite decentralized after Evan left. But yeah, at that point, it was, in my opinion, pretty much Evan proposed something, it would happen. What happened at the very beginning was we actually didn't go to the allocation of, it's actually taking me some time.
Half and half. It was gradual, right? It was
gradual. It started off at 80-20. So 20, I think, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 20% to masternodes and 80% for miners. And then that happened, and then like maybe 6 months went by, and then Evan was like, okay, we're going to switch it to 50-50, and the treasury 10%. Does anybody remember differently? This is a long time ago. So
I see. Well, so regardless of whether it happened all at once or it was, well, obviously it was gradual, but regardless of the exact details of how that happened, did things go favorably? Was there like an alarming drop in hash power? How did you feel about it, basically?
Well, at that point, you have to realize that the Dash price was, at one point it was $13, and then it was at $2. This is like really long time ago, so I don't really remember. But when when masternodes came out, we had that spike to $13, and then we went to $1.50.
There was a spike. Okay, I remember seeing a spike on the charts. I didn't know that it correlated with the rollout of masternodes. Okay, I'm sorry to have brought that up. I was just going to say, if it did correlate to that, it kind of heavily proves the point that some people are trying to make, which is that an increase in masternode rewards like increases the purchasing price of Dash.
Oh no, I don't think that's why the price went up at that point. I actually think that it went up because new technology was coming out, and people were very excited about that technology. I mean, with masternodes coming out, we also I think got our first implementation of CoinJoin, I believe. If I remember
factors, probably.
Yeah, but like there was a lot of technological innovation going on, so I think that's actually more the reason why the price went up at that point.
I'm going to bring up a question if you're finish your point, but I have a question after that.
Oh no, go on.
All right, so I think probably the most valid concern that I've seen in reading all of the comments, which I have read all of the comments on the proposal, the most valid criticism that I've seen is, hey, this just doesn't seem fair. Like we contracted, not in a legal sense, but the social contract of Dash was that we were going to have this certain allocation to miners, and then miners went out and then they bought hardware, which is expensive. They bought a bunch of hardware, and they expected to be able to use that hardware to earn a living or whatever this might be their main thing, and we're just going to shut it down on a specific date. No input from the miners, no nothing. Seems kind of cold-hearted, seems unfair. What do you say to that?
Sure. This is a long topic. Before I go into that. I will say one thing about the last topic is that I do believe that when we went from 20% masternode rewards to like 80-20 to 50-50, we did it over a period of 3 months or 4 months. Somebody might be able to correct me if they go back or they remember better, but I do think it was a very, very short time. And if we look at right now, when we would do this change would activate when platform starts. So in 5 years.
I'm taking you off the air right now, Sam.
That actually is a good point. That it will actually take time, and these miners, they are built. I don't know if companies are developing new miners like the D16 or 17 or whatever at this point. I don't think that that's happening. I think that one just came out, a new miner. But these miners are typically designed to have like 6 to 12 month payback periods, as far as I recall, back when I was doing this like 10 years ago. That's kind of what the market was pricing is, hey, if I can pay my miner back in 6 to 12 months, you have the upfront capital cost, and then you have the stream of revenue that sets that off and pays your miner off eventually. That was like 6 to 12 months. It may very well be 6 to 12 months before this actually lands in mainnet. I hope it doesn't. I hope it's not that long, because we don't have that long to survive. But there is at least some, like most of the miners that have purchased, they probably purchased a while ago, and
And I would like to respond to the fairness question, if I could, which is, so over the years, when there have been various changes, I'm thinking in particular of the first reallocation change that was proposed by Ryan Taylor. I remember him or others in the space saying things like, we've consulted with miners, and this seems like a good idea all around or whatever. And I remember thinking, like, are we talking about phone calls? Have there been actual phone calls like, hello, Mr. Miner, I would like to talk to you about this proposal I'd like to make and get your word on it. And that sort of, we've consulted with miners thing reminded me of back in the Bitcoin block war days, when I think it was Blockstream or one of those other corporations paid for like a summit for the miners, that they asked the miners to come and like sign these documents being like, yes, I agree to what you want to do, Blockstream, and I agree that I will do such and such a thing or whatever.
It was
and I just remember thinking, this whole like consulting with miners thing seems pretty silly and unnecessary when it's the miners who have the vote they have like the ultimate vote by whether or not they adopt the software, right? So like, this whole we've had conversations or we haven't seems kind of silly in light of it all depends on them adopting the software anyway, does it not?
No, it does not.
But it does not. Tell me this.
It does not. Wait, what?
I'm still thinking of the previous question, but okay, I'll answer this one and then I'll go back. So the question is, do miners decide the network? And that is not true, actually. Network consensus is decided by network consensus. So what does that actually mean? It really means, where do people think the network lies? And where do exchanges believe the network lies? Where do investors in the project believe the network lies? What is the truth? Now, generally what happens if there's a major change is that the project forks. I honestly do not believe that we would fork in this case, mostly because, most exchanges argue on the consensus that the chain lock is the decider of where the network lies, and the chain lock is run by the masternodes. Coinbase follows that approach, and I
It's
know
interesting that you say that. I didn't know that exchanges were that aware of chain locks, actually. And I would have said, if I were answering the question, I would have said most exchanges will probably look at dash.org and see what dash core group thinks the network is. It's even worse than
No,
it's even worse than that.
It's all over the place. It's all over the place. So, but the majority are on the chain locks, as far as I can see by how much. Not the majority of exchanges, right? Because there are a lot of exchanges, but the majority of like how much Dash is traded on what exchange are on the chain lock model. There are some exchanges on the most hash power, but those exchanges also basically just ask Dash Core Group what to do.
Exactly, that's what I meant. And if there was any doubt, we kind of already went down this road with the chain halt recently, and because there was that I know it was invalid chain. We talked about this in the previous episode, but it did have more hash power for a certain time, and some small exchanges and some small miners, they did say, oh, this is the longest chain, I will follow that. But for better or for worse, with all of that happened, what chain locks or what exchanges do now is, I think that they do what you're saying. They are looking more at the chain locks and seeing what is the chain locked chain, the longest chain locked chain. So that's actually really good news for this. If you're in support of this proposal, it's bad news if you're not in support of this proposal. I just want to spell it out, the question a little bit more directly. You're saying that if masternodes pass this proposal, giving DCG the signal to go ahead and develop this and cut a release of the software that had this change in it, and let's say that almost every single miner, except for maybe one small mining pool, they disagreed and they just hated it and they did not accept it. That's the worst case scenario. I don't think that will happen, but let's just say that is the scenario that we're talking about here. All the miners reject this change. What will happen?
Okay. Basically, this would mean that if that really happened and the miners reject it, we would just do a hard fork based off of a height instead of a BIP9 hard fork. And after enough masternodes adopted it, it would take effect, meaning that the consensus rules would change and masternodes would no longer accept blocks from miners that did not adopt the chain, and masternodes would chain lock the block that they now believe is in consensus, which had the changes.
But let's also now say that there are some masternodes, like maybe one or two masternodes, to take this to the extreme example again, that do actually chain lock the mining chain with the.
Oh no. Chain locks.
Well, they have to have a certain quorum size, right?
Yeah. You would have to have about. Only one thing can happen. You can either chain lock one block or another block, or one set of consensus rules, or one.
No, but the network can split, and there can be miners and masternodes on one network and miners and masternodes on another network, and provided that each of those networks have enough to produce the correct quorums. Then it's a decision for exchanges and all the other constituencies, right, to decide which chain do I follow.
Yeah, so if we had a split down the middle of the masternodes, that would be pretty much the worst case scenario. I really, really doubt that would happen.
So do I.
I believe that most likely the highest thing is that if the proposal passes, which I'm really not sure of at this point, if it does pass, what would happen? There's two options. Miners agree. Enough miners agree. If enough miners agree, we go BIP9. If enough miners don't agree, basically the masternode network will activate a certain height, and it will just take effect at that height. Enhanced hard fork, which is been talked about a lot on development reviews, would solve this problem, meaning that we wouldn't have to go a height activation type, and the enhanced hard fork will sadly be active in V20 at the same time. So in the future, past this, it basically gives the masternode network full control over activation or non-activation.
And what's an enhanced hard fork? Is that like an enhanced pat down at the TSA, or what is that?
No, it's just the name that I think Pasta gave the new hard forking mechanism, where basically it's done through a quorum, and 85% of it's actually not 85%. It's between 60 and 85% of masternodes have to agree to a new version by updating their software for the hard fork to take effect.
Amanda, just getting back to another point that we made earlier, if you could do my screen share one more time.
Sure thing.
I just brought this up just so that people didn't think I was pulling this out of nowhere. BlackRock and crypto connections much deeper than what people know of. BlackRock reportedly is one of the biggest shareholders in 4 of the top 5 mining companies. That there's no reason to suggest that, the only reason that they probably don't really care about being part of the Dash mining companies is that we're too small, we're too small of a fish to fry. But if we, ever get to that point, get back to that point, which I and Sam are both trying our hardest to do, then that will be a problem. But anyway,
Did
well,
we have any?
I'm
Sorry.
sure they didn't invest in mining. There's more lucrative ways for them to invest in Dash than invest in mining, I would say.
Oh, this isn't about making money. I'm talking about the control that they would have over the mining pools.
Mm-hmm.
In deciding which fork of Bitcoin, for example, was the one that they were following with all their money.
Yeah,
and they're all of their clients.
Pete, do we have any unanswered questions left from viewers? I think we got all of them. Yeah, so that feels like a good wrapping time to me. Does it feel like a good wrapping time to y'all?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. All right. Well, we sure appreciate you joining us today, Sam, especially on Thai time. And we're looking for somebody with basically the opposing point of view to join us next week to go over this proposal even further. So please reach out to us if that is you. And so thanks again, Sam. And yes. Okay, good. All right. We'll see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
And girl.